My name is Angie Chang, and I'm the co-founder of Girl Geek X. I've been organizing events in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 15 years, and this is our first virtual career fair. So I want to take a little bit of time, 1 minute away from our keynote speaker, to talk a little about the sponsors that are supporting us today, because they are hiring. And as you know in the headlines, there are layoffs. Your friends are probably looking for jobs. So please tell them about this free event that's happening right now today. And there are recruiters from Autodesk, Cadence, United States Digital Service in Washington, D.C., Code C, and Dematic. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about their booths. If you want to go check them out at 12 to 1 p.m. today, there'll be recruiters there. So a quick rundown of those booths. I walked around this morning and they look amazing. You should go look at them and meet the people at these companies. They're very friendly and they love answering your questions about the industry, their jobs, what it's like to work there, how to get your resume into tip-top shape. And by the way, I hope you're going to, a lot of the sessions today are very, very useful toward getting your resume and interview to be in a place where you can be successful. So Autodesk's booth has roundtables with recruiters from tech, sales, and G&A. They also have a women's group network that is going to be there. So please go talk to them at noon to 12 Pacific time. There's also Cadence, and they have roundtables for Cadence careers and to learn about Cadence culture or life at Cadence. So please go check out Cadence booth at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. today. United States Digital Service in DC has posted roundtable times in Eastern time. So I'm going to just tell you them in Pacific time because that's where I am. And I had to do this math this morning. So the design table is currently, I think, occupied. There's someone there in the USDS booth. They have a talent roundtable at 10 a.m. Pacific. They have a product roundtable at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And their engineering roundtable, if I'm doing the math correctly, is 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. So go check out the USDS booth for their tables at those times. And CodeC's booth has posted a sign that they're in the lounge and that their CEO, Shania, is going to be giving a developer workshop at 11:30 Pacific time today. If you want to learn about how to stand out in this job market for developers who are current and aspiring. And last but not least, Dematic's booth has roundtables about culture and Dematic careers. So please go check out their booth and talk to the recruiters and staff today in their booth. And I saw their lounge table. They had lots of people there. So go talk to them when you have a chance. They're really great and nice people. And now it's time to introduce our keynote speaker. So without further ado, I am going to introduce you to Judith Xiao. She is a senior software engineer at Stripe. She works on internal tooling, and prior to Stripe, she worked at startups in IoT and consumer marketplace. And she'll be talking to us about understanding companies' culture before accepting a job offer. So welcome our keynote speaker, Judith.
Thank you so much, Angie. Thank you all for joining and hope you're having a great time at the Girl Geek X Elevate conference so far. My name is Judith, and I will be talking about how to understand company culture before accepting the job offer. So hopefully you can come out of this session with some useful tips and tricks that you can use throughout the rest of this conference and beyond. So my name is Judith. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a software engineer at Stripe based out of San Francisco. Stripe is a payments processing platform for the internet, and I've been working at Stripe for the last 2.5 years as a full stack product engineer and currently on a team building internal collaboration tooling. Prior to Stripe, I worked at a couple other startups. I've actually worked at 3 different companies in the first 3 years of my career. So the thing about startups and smaller companies is that it's really hard to get a good sense of what working at a company is like unless you personally know someone there, which is why I'm here today to share strategies you can use to research company culture so it's less daunting to go out of your comfort zone and consider you're working at a company that you don't know much about. So in today's session, I'll be covering ways to research company culture throughout the entire interview process, starting from networking strategies before you apply, all the way until receiving and negotiating the job offer. And if there's any time left at the end, I'll also be answering questions in the chat. So definitely keep interacting in the chats and let me know your thoughts throughout the talk. Cool. So let's start off with some networking strategies. So, why is networking important? Networking is important for referrals, which get your foot into the door when a cold application doesn't work. So, how do you build a network? At events such as career fairs, conferences like this one, you can get contact information of not only recruiters at the career fair, but also your peers at networking sessions and follow up afterwards via email or connecting on LinkedIn. You never know how valuable a connection is, and it could be the key to getting your next job. If there are specific places you want to work at, you can search for employees on LinkedIn that you share experiences with, such as people who went to the same college or worked at a previous company together or are part of the same community, and use that as a starting point for connecting. Often, that shared connection is what gets people to respond. So, if you have a mentor at school or work, or know someone a little bit more senior than you in their career, you can also leverage their network and ask them to introduce you to people. And there are also several tech communities and groups out there that have job boards, networking, and mentorship events. So even if you don't have an existing community, there are plenty of them online that you can find. So if you have a favorite networking strategy that I didn't mention yet, feel free to share it with others in the chat. Cool. So after building up a network and scoring the interview, let's go over some useful questions to ask. First of all, make sure to tailor your question to the who you're interacting with so that you can get the most useful information. For example, you might be interacting with the recruiter or an interviewer for the same role, such as engineer, or a potential future manager or hiring manager. And let's go over some examples of these questions. So, questions about the day to day job are good to ask someone who shares the same role that you're interviewing for, such as an engineer. You could ask, what are your favorite or least favorite parts about the job? What is the most stressful part about your job? Or what is the on-call rotation like? For example, if you're working on a team or product that's supporting multiple regions across the globe, different countries, different time zones, you might be getting paged at odd hours, and that's something that you might want to think about before you accept the job offer. And then you should also ask people how they would describe their work-life balance. So, for example, right now, I can tell you that I can make time to take a brush painting class at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This means I can shift my schedule to work East Coast hours on parts of the week. I also block out some time in my schedule to volunteer to teach a high school computer science class on Friday mornings. A couple years ago, when I began my career, my answer to that question would be very different. I would say that I often stay late at the office for free dinner at 7 p.m. and then play board games with my coworkers afterwards. So, work life balance goals might be very different at different stages of your life. Questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion are good to ask recruiters. They often have the most up to date data about this. So, for example, you could ask what ERGs or employee resource groups are at the company. For example, this could be like women or parents, or for example, my company has like an East and Southeast Asian employee resource groups, and we celebrate like Lunar New Year, and we have like book clubs and things like that. Another good question to ask is, what is the ratio of underrepresented minorities in leadership? So companies often will like brag about their diversity statistics being, better than average, but the more you go up the career ladder, the more senior and more leadership positions, the more the numbers dwindle. And lastly, you can ask, what has your company done to support current event? For example, during the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision, several companies made public statements about covering abortion-related travel expenses. So if there's a current event that might be applicable to you or that you care a lot about, you should definitely ask about what the company's stance is and what they are doing to support employees. Cool. So next we have career development questions, and these are good to ask a hiring manager. So, a good question to ask is, what does it take for someone to be successful in this role? Maybe the manager already has some expectations that they can share with you. This could also be reworded as, what would success look like 6 months down the line? Um, and what advice would you give to someone who just joined? And what is the performance review process like? So, if you are trying to get promoted soon, you could ask this question to see if the expectations align with what you're aiming for. And then lastly, an interesting question to ask might be, why is this position open? So maybe the team is trying to backfill someone who left either by choice or not by choice. Or maybe the company is growing really quickly, like they want to double their headcount by the end of the year. And all of this could have implications on the company culture. So I know I talked about a lot of interview questions, but there are probably plenty more that would be useful to ask. So share your favorite interview question in the chat if you have one. Cool. So other than asking questions during the interview process, you can also do some research about what the public thinks about the company. So first, let's start off with company trajectory. Public companies will publish their quarterly earnings call, which shows how their financials performed against expectations. You can also look at how their stock is doing. For startups, it's a bit more complicated because company financials are private. And Crunchbase is an online resource that shows the series of a startups' fundings and valuations, which is how much investors think the startup is worth. So down rounds are when a company raises money at a lower valuation than they did previously, which might indicate that they are not doing so well. However, keep in mind about the macroeconomic situation as well. For example, it's possible that all tech companies are not doing well at a certain point in time, or certain spaces might be having a particularly hot moment, like AI is right now. And not too long ago, there was Web3. So there are always trends in tech. Some are successful long term, and others might have up and downs. And you should keep all of this in mind. For public image, you can look at news articles about the industry, including peer companies and competitors. For example, I work in the fintech space, so I'm always keeping up with news about other fintech companies. Also, company policies and reactions towards global events, such as return to office policies or layoffs, can be pretty indicative of the culture as well. For example, like their messaging towards departing employees, or even just how they treat their departing employees. Many founders and leaders are super active on social media, and some of them even write blog posts. And those are pretty telling of how they run their business. This could be from their like Twitter accounts to like each company's blog section. And lastly, some companies will list their values on their website, and that often defines their culture as well. So now that we know what the public thinks, how do employees themselves feel about the company? There are several online resources that reveal employee sentiment, and I'll share a few here. So, Blind is an anonymous forum where people can chat about their tech companies, and it requires your company email to sign up. Glassdoor is very similar and has anonymous employee reviews. Comparably is a report card that rates company culture based on several employee reported factors. And lastly, we have social media where influencers post content about their role in tech. So it's important to look at multiple resources and remember to take them with a grain of salt. So someone who posts anonymously will have a very different agenda than someone who's posting on their personal social media for their image. But one thing you can look at is current trends. So maybe if a bunch of employees are feeling a certain way about a policy that was implemented in like the last 6 months, that might be super relevant to you. But something that happened like 5 years ago is probably not as relevant. Always remember that culture can change as a company grows or goes through formative events or goes through leadership changes. So let's say you've done all your research and have an offer in hand. How do you make sure that you are getting paid what you're worth? The first thing about offer compensation is to always negotiate. Every component can be negotiated, including salary, stock, and bonus, and you don't know unless you try. You might be even able to negotiate other benefits or maybe working hours or even your level at the company. And even if you don't have competing offers, you can still look at data and use that to negotiate and see if you are getting a fair deal. So so there are several crowdsourced databases available online. The first one that I really like is levels.fyi, and I like this because not only does it show the different components of compensation, such as salary, stock, and bonus, it also shows people's levels as well as their years of experience. So I've successfully negotiated my level when I accepted an offer before. So that is something you could look at, like to see if your years of experience line up to the offer that you're getting. Glassdoor also has a lot of anonymously reported salary information, as well as LinkedIn and Candor. So someone in the chat asked a question: are these tips more geared towards large or established companies? So for a lot of these resources, obviously there will be more data on large companies, but personally I've used these to interview at small startups, and you're surprised like what information you can find out there. I think the tech community is very big, and a lot of people will be interviewing or talking to the same companies even if they are very small. For government jobs, they publish all of their salaries online. It's public information. And if the company sponsors H-1B visas, the H-1B visa salaries are also all available online. And if you live in a state that has salary transparency laws, for example, California now requires all companies to publish like a salary range for the role. That's super important information that you can leverage. Some other states might have be required to reveal the salary ranges if you ask them or if you pass a certain interview stage. So definitely look up the applicable laws for your state that you live in and use that to your advantage. And for startups, it's a little bit more complicated because a big component of the compensation is equity. And for this, there's a super useful guide online called Holloway's Guide to Equity Compensation that shares like what is reasonable percentage of equity to expect at different stages of a company. And definitely share any other information you might have in the chat that I haven't listed above. So hopefully you've learned something valuable in this session and are able to apply a combination of these strategies to understand company culture a little bit better, and maybe even use that during the career fair later on today. So yeah, thank you all for joining. I'll be answering questions in the chat for the remainder of the time. I think we might be at time. So feel free to stick around or use or contact me on LinkedIn or via my email. And hope you all enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you, Judith. That was really a great talk on company culture and how to evaluate. I like the part about networking to get your foot in the door, especially if you don't have referrals or an in the industry. It's a great way to get that in. Plenty of people here who will like to refer somebody. So I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to be hopping over to our next session soon. So see you on the other side. Thank you, Judith.